Hi guys, it's Rowan here. I just wanted to share with anybody who is interested my current organizational system as a long-term campaign DM. I've been running my current campaign for coming up on 5 years. We started in February of 2017, so it will be 5 years very soon. It's a four-person adventuring party, four of my best friends in the world, and we have been having an absolutely amazing time with this game. And recently, I decided to compile everything into a database for myself because a lot of it is homebrew, a lot of it is well built by myself. It is set in Forgotten Realms in Faerun, but it is set sometime later than the current setting in the books. So essentially, what happened was one of my players, when we decided to start playing, I was going to run Lost Mines of Phandelver. One of my other players was already running it for her friends and family, and I decided that instead of scrapping everything I'd worked on, I would do a time jump. So the plot hook for the very start of this campaign was that the heroes of the Lost Mine of Phandelver campaign messed up and made a huge mistake and left a huge evil behind, and our modern heroes would have to come in and take care of it. So the program I am using, sorry about my dogs in the background, by the way, they will randomly bark because they have absolutely no control over these little monsters. The current program I'm using is Scrivener. I have used it for years and years. I used to use it for my books, and now I use it for D&D, which is perfect life progression, really. I use it for a great deal of things, and it's such a handy application. It's got so many different functions and folders, but I won't go into great detail with that. I'll just show you what I've got. So we start out with our story folder. I have been writing summaries for every game we've played for the last 5 years. At the end of the game, I write up the summary of what the game was about, what happened, who said what to who, that kind of thing. It's all been very detailed notes to start with that kind of petered out and then picked up again. And it. I have a lot to go off of my handwritten notes, but sometimes I can't read my own handwriting, and I have to try and remember as best I can what happened. But over the course of 5 years, we've done 9 chapters. We're currently up to the ninth chapter. Chapters tend to go for about anywhere from a dozen to 20 episodes long. The longest one I think we had was chapter 4, which was one of the backstory quests for our cleric. She was hunting down pieces of a weapon set as a part, as a part of her backstory, and that took a while to track them all down. So the first section is just for me to be able to quickly refer back to any story notes. The second section is the actual section for our adventuring party. They are known as TBD, Beautiful Disasters, and this is the logo that I designed for them a while ago. They each have their own section for me to refer to really quickly if I need to go and find anything. I've got character profiles. This is our barbarian fighter, which just has basic details, names, aliases, the usual origins, appearances, any connections they have, names of their horses, family names, any memberships, proficiencies and skills. A lot of them do book studies and various take on various magic items to get immunities or resiliences to things. This is just where I can quickly come and grab those details. Abilities and features, again, just nice and easy for me to see if they do something in a fight that I'm like, where did that come from? I can just duck in here really quickly, and each feature has where the source of it comes from, so I know exactly what part of the player's handbook to refer back to. Magic items, we don't actually use the 3 attunement system. I came up with a new attunement system, a lot like if you've ever played Diablo. It's a lot like that. You've got a head socket, body socket, a neck or amulet socket, a ring on each hand, gauntlet socket, that kind of thing. So we socket items instead of specifically attuned to them. So I've got a list of all the different items that they are attuned to via those sockets, external items, other things that they wear, and things that they carry with them that happen to be magical. A lot of them carry a lot of magical. It's a very heavy magic campaign, which I wanted to do from the start because I love magic and power. I also have a canon notes section, which is basically a way for me to keep track of all these fun little things in roleplay that happened, like the fact that she likes her tea very strong, that she dislikes heights, things like that, little canon notes that crop up in the roleplay. They also have these packets that I sent them when we very first started the game. Everybody sent me their backstories, and in exchange for the write-up of their backstories, I sent them out a document with a lot of information on their character based on that backstory, all the people that they knew, and a summary of each. Locations that they'd been in the past that they would be familiar with. So they just, if we went to a location, they'd be like, I know that, and be able to look at their packet and in character give a quick summary of the location without having to go DM tell me what I know. They all got a timeline of things that happened to them in their backstory, and just all based on what they gave me. So it wasn't all just me making it up. It was from the sources of the documents that they sent me to start with. They also got, if they were things like this character was dwarf, so any dwarven cultural notes that's set in the world. I have a specific system for the way dwarfs braid their hair. There's a specific system for the beads that they wear in their hair. There's a lot of different cultural notes that kind of went out with that as well. And this particular character loves to craft knitted and woven equipment, so I've got time frames for making those as well. But that was just the general pack. Each one of them got a different packet to begin with, and of course their current active character sheet. Also for the party, I've written up a list of all the teleportation schedules that they know, and all the ones that they've had copied down, used previously, for me to refer to really quickly. If they're traveling somewhere, I remind them whether or not they have a sigil or not. A list of active tabs, so if they've been to different places and asked shopkeepers to look out for certain things for them, if they have informants in places, I need to keep a track of that. Contacts, quick contacts, things like scrolls of telescription and sending stones to which NPCs, and SOSA contracts. SOSA is a guild through which they can hunt down monsters for pay or for parts, for pay, and they have taken out a handful of contracts in the past. That's just me keeping a track of which ones are finished and which ones aren't. So that's basically the adventuring party section. The biggest section in this entire document is places and people, which is essentially, given the size of Faerun, there have been a lot of places. They've met a lot of people. I think the last count we were up to with NPCs is 423 people that I have played in this game. But I've broken it down here so I can quickly find the reference sheet for any NPC. I've broken it down by location, and the locations are all in the order that they've been to them. So the very first place they went to was Phandalin. For each place, I have a map if there is a pertinent map. I have a summary of the town for myself so I know what things look like, and general information. And then I have little summary notes on all the different locations I have in that town, sorted into temples and shrines, inns and taverns, homes for different people and farms, things like government locations, public locations, shops and vendors, all the good stuff. Some like nearby locations are broken down as well. We've got the Phandelver Woods. If anybody's played Lost Mines of Phandelver, you'll recognise all of these. And all the different details for each of those locations under geography. Under NPCs for each location, we have all of the people that are there or were last seen there. And Vandalin's a big place that they go back to over and over again, so there is a very large number of NPCs there. For the NPCs, they are sorted by family, so I don't have 5,000 folders. So if there's multiple members of a specific family, they all come under the same one. I do tend to sort them in terms of, if we have a look quickly at the family of the cleric of the party, she's a Thistlewind, and this is her family. If there is a specific character that has things like spells or magic items, I also list their spells used and which games they use them in, which magic items they carry and where it came from. And if they're deceased, I will also list them as deceased, just so I can immediately see that. But for the most part, the NPC lists do get very, very long. There's a lot of NPCs, and there's a lot of different locations. The location breakdown is done by blue is cities and towns that they've been to. Red are places that move. So for the most part, these are ships. Wayfarer, Oleander, Drake, and the Sun Siren are all ships. The identifier was an NPC they ran into early on who could identify things for them, and his tent is a magnificent mansion, and he moves from town to town to town, providing that's service. Green folders are places from their backstories that they have not been to in this particular game yet. They haven't actively been to them, but they've been there in their different backstories. Yellow folders are kind of miscellaneous. So we've got travelers, characters that are on the road that aren't in one specific location. Clockwork Contingency is another adventuring party that they ran into, and we've got all those characters in there. The Great Mages Council, of course, moves around from different location to different location depending on where they're convening. Moonsea Players is the Bard's Troop, things like that. Guardians are very good guys. They are very, very powerful entities that are being slowly created by the party over the course of this campaign. That's a whole other thing I won't get into. And the Valor Slain are the very, very bad guys, so I won't open those two folders because I don't want to spoil my party. But we've got mentioned things, which is basically places and people that have come up in conversation or in research, but that they have not visited or been to in their backstories. So, and there's names of people as well that have come up in legends, in prophecies, in they do a lot of book research in this game. I have to write up a lot of book research, so there's a lot of that as well. But you get the idea. The people and places section is absolutely massive, and it took a long time to compile. Next, we have guilds and groups, which is, again, very straightforward. Just all of the different popular guilds and groups that they've encountered, including all of the Thieves Guilds, the Whispers Guild that our particular rogue belongs to. Under each guild, I have summaries, the symbols, the known leaders of the guild, known agents, or known members if it's a specific, for example, the Best Coast Performing Company was created by our Bard. They have employees and they have known members. I also list all the general information about the building that they're in, if they're in a specific home base or things like that. It's just, again, very quick for me to skip back to immediately if they suddenly pull out that they want to go to a specific guild or location. World and Culture was probably the most fun one to compile because it is essentially just world and culture notes. There's lists of alcohols that they've encountered, the battles that they've heard about. My favorite one is the books that they've encountered, because they do look for a lot of books, including a collection of smut that they have come across throughout their journey. I also have, if I've broken down books further, I have details of those in like subcategories. They've read a woman named Lenine. They read all of her journals. So you've got basically the contents of all of her journals written up in there, and other different books and diaries. All the dragons that they've run into, drugs that they've encountered or used. Constellations is probably one of my favorites. I created a whole new calendar system for this world because I was very unfamiliar with it to start with, and I wanted my own system, and I created the constellations based on that calendar because the constellations did come into it for our cleric. Her mother being a big fan of the stars and studying constellations and teaching her kids that. So cultural notes, we have like the same kind of thing I was talking about before with the dwarves and the drow and the gnomes and various other cultural touchstones that come up for each of those different races in my world. Festivals, I actually based all the festivals in the world around the Sabbats, around the Wheel of the Year, because I'm very, very familiar with those. Makes it much easier. Flowers, very straightforward, just a bunch of the different flowers that they've run into throughout the game. Games that they've played. Gods is very straightforward. It's just summaries of each of the gods for me for quick reference. Herbs is another huge favourite because two of our party members love to collect herbs and use them. I have a list of magical herbs and a list of non-magical herbs, where you can source them, how common they are, and what they do. So a lot of the magical herbs do some pretty cool stuff. A lot of the simple herbs are useful in roleplay, in different elements of that, but both our rogue and our cleric love using herbs for stuff. Languages, I didn't invent too many new languages, but I did invent a whole bunch of random words in the existing languages because I love making up gibberish words. So every time I've done that, I've written down what I said and what it means, and I've collected these together and given these to the party as well, so they've got this for a reference. But I do tend to love making up words in-game when somebody's speaking a different language, so I've broken down the ones that I've used here. Mythology is stuff that they've researched. The Bastion and the Black Star are two dreadnought ships that disappeared a long time ago that they are tracking down. The Origin Stones are the overarching core story of this 5-year campaign. Well, it's probably going to go longer than 5 years at this rate, but the original plan was a 5-year campaign based around them finding these 6 stones that created magic in the first place. I won't open that again, it might spoil the party. Prophecies, they have run into a lot of prophecies throughout this campaign. I have done a lot of different tarot card readings, and they've found things written on walls, graffiti, stuff like that. They've had messages from Shauntia, who is the cleric's god. And every single time they've had a prophecy, I have added it to this list. And for the most part, I'm pretty sure we're at about 99% have all come true at this point. Songs was the repertoire of our bard. Just a list of the songs that she knows in case she wants to reference those in roleplay. There's a handful of others that have been added over time, but for the most part, that's what songs is. And that's the world and culture notes, which was, again, the most fun part to put together. Under magic, I have the magical items that they don't carry around with them, like really large or significant magical items that they have run into, that are like the Spear of the Sky Mother, for example, was a legendary weapon. They got one use out of it for a huge boss fight. So it's important for me to have the data on what it was in case it does come up again in some kind of context, but it's not something that they've got carried around with them. Structures, much the same thing. They've run into some big magical structures over time, crystal obelisks, a Sage of Steel, which was a very, very complicated door lock that they needed to use a lot of effort to get through, stuff like that. Magic systems, we have Dern magic is kind of like animalistic magic system that I created. There are a bunch of different gifts of that I won't go into. It's very, very complicated, but I love homebrew and I love world building. I also created a basic Fey magic system, but I won't get into the complicated details of that. Homebrew-wise, I have created 4 subclasses. A lot of this campaign is based around crystal magic, and the wielders of crystal magic come from the 9th school of magic, which is lithomancy in this game. So I've got a wizard lithomancer, a Titan's blood sorcerer, basically from the line of the Titans. Lapidary artificer also work with crystals, and the shadowbound paladin, which I'll just bring up, was one of my favorites. Is a different kind of paladin flavor that I wanted to give some of my NPCs. So that was a lot of fun to write. I love creating subclasses. I'll probably create more. But I use these primarily for my NPCs. My player characters do have the option to multi-class into these if they choose to. I think one of them will be next level, but we'll see how that goes. Scratch lists is my last section, and it is basically a ton of NPC names. Look at all the red lines. A ton of NPC names for me to draw from. If somebody says, "Hey, you," on the street and runs up to a random gnome, I can pull out that his name is Sellers Coldbarrow. Like, it just makes my life so much easier than having to come up with names on the spot. Shop names, same thing. Different types of shops, taverns, inns, that kind of thing. I've also got pre-rolls for gemstone loot, because gemstones do different things in this campaign. They all have magic in them. And general loot roll-ups, like different loot packs. If I want to spring some loot on them, I don't have to sit there and roll while they wait. That's basically it. The research folder is empty because it was full of a bunch of miscellaneous things that I have sorted into the rest of the folders. But yeah, if you guys were interested at all in knowing that's how I run my DM folder and how I gather all my information, and I hope that was a fun watch. Cheers.